Now that was a perfect entrance. See if you would have pushed me.
I wasn't going to do it that hard.
Well, this anybody.
I was just going to stop you and take care of the camera.
I trust you. All right, thank you. This is Laughs Unlimited. I'm the first up. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right. Here we go. Here we go. This is 1.3.1. Surveys, which we've already done a bit about how to do a sample survey with our sampling methods. Experiment and observational study. Okay, so the main gist for this week is to be able to either be told about a study and you have to identify it as one of these, or you might have to design a study based on what you're trying to find out, and also based on one of these. So I'm happy to start that sample survey is something we've already done. You select the sample from a target population. Okay, so if you wanted, if you were seeing about how many students in the school approve of the dress code, you wouldn't ask people that aren't in the school, right? It's just a target population is a sign, and that's kind of like stating the obvious. But then we have these sampling methods, which we already learned about last week. This was just how to create a sample, remember, a sample from the larger population. This was just how to group them. Today is about what to do, what's next. Maybe you just give them a survey, and that's the real basic thing we've studied, right? We've studied surveys already. For instance, gathering GPA info on 9th graders by selecting a sample of 9th graders. So I create a sample. I'm actually just interested in 9th graders, so I can say from the beginning, I'm going to create a sample. Maybe I do an SRS, simple random sample of 9th graders, assign them all the numbers, 1 through, there's probably like 200 of them. Right? And then you just do a random number generator to figure it out. Figure out who you're going to have in the sample, then give them a survey. Very basic. We've done this one before. The main thing is it has a random number generator because the sample group we're looking at has to be random for that. Okay. Between these two, if I'm asked to identify which one a study is following, I first go to experiment, because there's some real specific things with experiment that we are going to use to figure out if it's an experiment. So this is very similar to what you might see in a science class, except for when we have human subjects. The treatment is assigned either to the experiment group, where they actually receive the treatment, or it's to the placebo group. That's the fake one. They don't actually get the pill that, if it was new medicine for diabetics, there'd be one group that the experiment group actually gets the treatment. They actually get the pill or medicine every day, however it's administered. There's the placebo group that would be our control group, and they would not get the medicine. You see? Nobody knows which one they're in. You don't know what group you're in. I want to kind of jump down a little bit. This is supposed to be kind of put up in this area. But a confounding factor is something you don't expect to be an influencer, right? So if I had a new sports drink, right, and I gave it to all the track people, and they drank my sports drink at the meet, and they won the meet, can I say that my sports drink causes track teams to win? No. So you guys know, because you're like, that's not right, that's not right. Doesn't pass that test, right? It's confounding factors. What could it have been? Maybe the other team isn't as good. Maybe you've had really good practices. Maybe what else? Maybe
it just happens to be a good.
You have a good day. Your 10 best people have their best days. There's like 3 PRs. You got really good personal records in there. All these confounding factors, right? Confounding factors are just, it's when there's something else influencing the experiment that you don't expect. So why do you think that if you're in the placebo group for this diabetes medication, in my example, the diabetes medication, if you were in the placebo group and you didn't know which group you're in, how would, let's say that you were in the placebo group, but you did start to feel better. What do you think the confounding factor would be? What could you say you were in the placebo group and you actually felt like you were getting healthier? Does anybody have an idea on that? Yeah, Wazine. You're what? You're eating healthier. That could be a confounding factor. Maybe you're just like, I'm in this study. I better make myself healthy. You start eating fresh fruits and vegetables. What else?
Maybe it's just the brain.
What's that called?
The placebo effect.
Placebo effect, right? Maybe psychosomatic. That's another word for it. Psycho, the mind. Somatic, the body. It's when something in the mind is making the body change. You can just think that you're getting this new medication that you've never had before. You don't know what group you're in, but you're like, oh, I'm part of this study. I'm getting this new medicine. So your mind actually having that program going that you're getting this medicine, you make yourself better, will make your body better. It's a really fascinating, instance that we have as just a species, how our mind works with our body like that. Questions?
So you could take like some random pill or whatever, and it would and you'd be tricking yourself into thinking that it's working, whereas that's cool.
Yeah. And you can't force it. So in order for that to work, you would have to be in an experiment where you don't know which group you're in. But it also works in the negative way, right? It could work in the negative way where, you think you're going to get sick, or you're really stressed about something, so you get sick. Psychosomatic could be positive, or it could be negative too. So based on that, these two groups, you're going to have some responses, and you're just going to compare them. Because really what we're looking at is, how do people do with the medicine versus people that are not on the medicine for diabetes? Okay. You have to have a random sample group. So these groups are created randomly. You can't say, all my healthiest patients I'm going to put in the experiment group because I want the healthy outcomes. Right? It has to be random on who's included. And generalized to a population, that's something we could do. So if a diabetes medicine works for 95% of people, then it's going to get FDA approved, and you can say it's going to work for approximately that number of people in the population, if it was a good study. Okay. I'll just mention briefly, that as you know, I've done some work in institutions, prisons, mental hospitals, and I've done some studies there.
Think for a second.
Oh, I don't have any. That's fine. So in doing these studies with those populations, those are called vulnerable populations. So you have to get special clearance to be able to do that. It's through the Department of Health and Human Services. It's a government regulation that you can't, anytime you're doing any kind of experiment or testing on human subjects, you have to pass all these different requirements. It's called an Irb study. So I've done one of those in actually one of the harder places to do it, which is in a prison, because that's a vulnerable population. And when people are vulnerable, they may answer in a certain way, right? So if somebody really wanted to get paroled, they may answer in a way that would look beneficial to them. So even in this, when you work in vulnerable populations, you have to think about what kind of questions you're asking. Because there's an aspect of fake good, right? Pretending to be good to kind of get some kind of esteem or favoritism. Zip your hand up. Okay. So that's going to be easy to compare to an observational study, because experiment has a experiment group and a placebo group. Okay, so it's got to have that treatment. There has to be a treatment assigned that you're looking at. So when we get to this question here, I think you'll see how you can see if you can check if it's an experiment real quick. So observational study, this is when we just observe a mass of people that may have characteristics I want to separate out. It's only observing, no treatment assigned. No treatment assigned. Okay? There's no control group, there's no placebo group, or manipulation of the sample set. So basically you're looking at everybody. You're not deciding to look at the healthiest patients to see, who has a good diet. You have to pretty much take every bit of the sample, or you have to have a random sample. It doesn't impact the subject study. Okay. Also, it includes observations, measurements, and surveys, and you can only make a correlation. You can't, when you're observing, you can't say this causes this, because you're just observing a portion of everybody. Here's my example. I think this is going to help us see what this is completely. The example is smoking's smoking nicotine's relation to lung cancer. Now, with your neighbor, I want you to talk for 30 seconds. Why can I not? Why is this not an example I can use with an experiment? Smoking nicotine's relation to lung cancer. Why can that not be an experiment? So with your neighbor, talk for 30 seconds. We'll come back quick.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you told people, hey, smoke this to get lung cancer.
It's observable. So there's no treatment.
Wait,
Can't
can you repeat the question again?
Sure. So the example I give here is smoking nicotine and that relation to lung cancer. My question is why that parameter cannot be an experiment. You can't try to draw a conclusion from this using an experiment. So think if I use an experiment for this, what would I have to have? I would have to have two groups. So think about that. Okay, 10 more seconds.
Because I'm under the AC, so
I'm going to bring blankets for students.
really?
They get cold?
Yeah.
All right, let's bring it back together quick. Good. So for a Babe Red Starburst, anybody have some input? Hands up.
So it would be dangerous, first of all, because if we know there's some kind of correlation to lung cancer, and we gave them nicotine to the point where they got lung cancer, that would be a liability issue.
Totally correct. And that wouldn't be an experiment that the Institutional Review Board, the IRB, Department of Health and Human Services, would approve. Right.
It's kind of saying what he was saying. It was saying observational studies is observing only. You can't give them something like on the smoking's relation to nicotine. You're giving it something you're not observing. It's more of an experiment than an observation.
Okay. I see a lot of other good hands, but Andy's going to be my last one. See that a bit further? What do you got?
I said no one would even want to do that because, like, to find out if they're going to get lung cancer, you know, like, who would want to find that out?
Be part of this study and you might get lung cancer?
Yeah.
Right?
And they want volunteers.
Nice catch. So here's the deal. If I was running this parameter, I wanted to know what smoking nicotine's relation is to lung cancer. And if I did an experiment, I'd have to find people that don't smoke. And I'd say, okay, you over here in our treatment group, you guys have to come to the hospital every Monday and I'm going to give you 2 packs of cigarettes. And you got to smoke those every single week for a year.
Okay.
Right? When you do an experiment, you have to set it up so everyone even does the same thing. You know, you have to get people that hadn't had lung cancer or smoked because you want to start from scratch. And also, it would be really apparent. You would know if you're in the placebo group unless there's cigarettes that, I don't know, don't have nicotine. I don't even want to know. But you see how it would also be dangerous. If you have to go until you have lung cancer, you can't hurt people in doing a study. The subjects have to not be harmed. All right. The other little bit here is at the bottom. So we can't do an experiment because having the treatment group would be dangerous for them. And we can't conclude it to there. So we'll just observe, and we're going to observe smokers at different years along the path, see how their lungs are. We're going to observe it instead of trying to do it in an experiment. So you see, if this was the parameter I was assessing and trying to see, well, which one would I want to use? I wouldn't use the experiment because those groups are going to be dangerous to put people in. The last bit, we don't want people in an observational study, or actually really any of these studies. Sometimes funds are given to people that do experiments. That's actually more common. But we want volunteers. Now, why is it that we don't want to have paid participants in our observational study? Let's see some hands. Thanks.
Because there might be a bias. So say you're saying, oh, I'm going to give you $50 if you try it and like it, so you're going to say, oh, I love it because you're paying them.
Exactly. If you're paying somebody, they have whole different reactions to things. Maybe they want to be involved in the next study where they get paid again. and they're going to try to give the right answer to be a part of that. Right? So you always have to be mindful of, do they have any monetary investment? Right? We're going to go over one example that is pretty close to what we just said. But you want to have volunteers for the most unbiased sample. Okay. Again, with experiments, sometimes they do have to do, because the clinical trials are so involved, they have to compensate because you're missing work even, you know. So let's look at this. In your workbook, go to number 1. We're going to look at numbers 1 and 9, which are part of the classwork. So let's get started on that, and then I'll set you loose. So it's coming up right now. We're going to go to page 93. Or actually 97. Class of 97. Shout out. Say what? Oh. I'll actually fall.
Wait, were you class 97?
Yeah. Old school. I meant, no, 97. 97. Okay, you got it? All right, let's look at this one. And those at home, just know we're at page 97. We're looking at number 1. No, actually, we're going to look at number 1. Dang it. All right, we're on page 97. We're looking at number 1. We're trying to figure out if the method of study described is a sample survey, experiment, or observational study. Number 1, a weight loss program is purchased by 25,000 people. The company registers all 25,000 people in a database, recording each person's starting weight. After 8 weeks, the company checks in with 5,000 customers selected at random to record the new weights of these customers to determine their weight loss progress. All right, what's your inclination? First off, the first thing we ask you is, would this fit into an experiment? Why not?
Because they're not like giving them anything to like drop weight.
Well, they had a treatment, but what if you're in a weight loss program? What would the placebo group do?
They wouldn't work out.
They wouldn't do the program, right? You're testing if the program works.
It'd be an observation.
Okay, so now the inclination is observational study. Good. Anybody have another idea with that? Because we need to look a little bit closer if it's going to fit observational. Excellent.
I think it's a sample survey because in observational studies there can't be a treatment for them.
It can't be what?
There can't be a treatment in observational.
Right. So there can't be a treatment, and there is a treatment as far as that goes. Do the subjects, the people, have any monetary investment?
Yes.
Where do we see that?
Purchase.
A weight loss program is purchased by 25,000 people. If you do Weight Watchers and you pay $300 for the 2 months, don't you want to be able to say, I lost this much weight, I lost a bunch of weight. You don't want it to be worth, $300 for you lost 1 pound, right? So there's that incentive, a bias that people will misreport. They'll say, oh yeah, I want to be with everyone else who gets clapped because they lost 10 pounds. So they say 10 pounds. You see how that would work? So they're not being paid. They're not being paid, but they already purchased the program that they're assessing. And really with that, they're assessing themselves and their own, what they got out of the program. People always want to think they got more out of it if they purchased it, right? Like if you go to Six Flags and all the rides are broken down, you still want to feel like you got on enough rides because you paid for that $100 ticket or whatever it is. It's not that much, is it? Okay, let's look at number 9. That's the other one I want to help you with.
Which number 1 was it?
Yes. Oh, number 1 was sample survey. You won't just write sample survey. You have to put some reasoning behind it. No reasoning, no points. So sample survey. We had some reasons. And it could be negation of the other options. So it's not an experiment because we said it would be impossible to do a placebo group. Or there's nothing about a placebo group or treatment. Observational, we said it wasn't observational because they're not volunteers. They have investment and bias. Do what?
Bullet points.
Yeah, it's perfect. Do bullet points. Doesn't have to be a paragraph. Just want some reasoning. It's more than they ask. They don't ask for reasoning, so I want it to mimic what we're going to have to do on the quizzes. All right. Let's look at 9. A group of biology students would like to know how the type of light that some flowers are exposed to impacts the growth of the flowers over time. The students want to explore the effects of natural light, ultraviolet light, fluorescent light. What kind of study might the students conduct to find out what type of light impacts the growth of some flowers? What do you think? First off, can we do a sample survey? Is there a way to ask the plants if they like different light?
Yeah, there is, but like
Not in this universe.
You can test.
Kind of.
You can test. You don't have to ask them, so you like, use the light on them and the way they react.
You can measure the growth?
Yeah.
Okay. A sample survey, whatever the subjects are. If it's a sample survey, though, the subjects have to respond. Okay?
But they are technically responding.
Right, and I'm observing their responses, so it's closer to observational. But there are observations within an experiment as well. So does anybody have any other ideas they want to lend to this on one of the 3? Haley?
I would like to remove the experiment to the best option because you're actually conducting an experiment to see which one reacts the best.
I love it. That's perfect. You probably can't walk around and see a bunch of plants that are growing under fluorescent light. You're not going to find naturally occurring plants that are growing in fluorescent light or ultraviolet light. That's something you have to set up. You have to create the constraints there. We could walk around and find what plants with natural light, okay? And maybe in the experiment, the natural light is really just the placebo group because it's not a special type of light that's used. So definitely it is an experiment because we have different categories we're trying to assess, and those categories don't happen naturally. So we set it up, right? We're going to have to simulate these categories. So experiment does work best for that. We're going to go with experiment. Okay. I wanted to just go over these to give you an idea of the rationale I want you to show. Okay, so the rationale is, in addition to what it is, you have to put the rationale. Okay. Any other questions? It's pretty straightforward, right? Okay, there's 3 parts to it. There's only 3 parts for the rest of the week. There's not a whole lot more to the standard, so we'll work through it. Okay. Let's do a. Anybody have shout out they want to do on the video? Crickets. What should we say?
Juniors are going to win the rally.
Juniors are going to win the rally. Ouch. Not everyone agrees with that.
Why are we in first place though? Why are we in first place?
It's just the game, son.
Yeah, well, so did I.
All right. So there's no shout outs. There's no shout outs. Oh, I'm at 200. 200. All right, let's just do subscribe on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Subscribe.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to take the elevator out.
We're going. Oh.